Top government sources have indicated that shots have been fired between Indian and Chinese troops along the line of actual control in Eastern Ladakh sector. Sources in the army confirmed that China fired first at Indian positions and in retaliation, the Indian side fired back warning shots. Indian army have been on high alert ever since they took control of Kala Top and Helmet Top in southern Pangong So, and Chinese troops have been making advances to regain control of the two peaks. The situation is under control as of now, going by what government sources have told us. But what we've seen is an unprecedented escalation really at the line of actual control. What sources are telling us is that first it was in fact China that fired shots, after which Indian troops retaliated. Abhishek Bhalla is joining us live this morning from Leh with all the latest on this. Abhishek, we're waking up to a lot of breaking inputs that are coming in from the line of actual control. I just want you to break down for us what we know at this point. What have government sources told you about the situation currently?
Well, there was a build-up to this escalation, Akshita, over the last 1 week, and what we've now heard is that there was an exchange of fire. In fact, these were warning shots that were fired at the line of actual control. According to Chinese reports, the incident has taken place on the southern bank of Pangong Lake. There is no official statement from India on the incident as of now, but yes, there is a confirmation through sources that yesterday, which is the 7th of September, there was an incident of firing, and this is unprecedented. But what is important is that, you know, after the Galwan incident where India lost 20 brave men, including the commanding officer of 16 Bihar Regiment, the Indian Army had changed the rules of engagement when it comes to issues like this with the Chinese. Earlier, there was a sort of an agreement between the two armies that there will be no exchange of fire, but the Indian Army tweaked that, and the reason given was that if at all there is a provocation and the troops feel that they are under any kind of a life-threatening situation, then they can use firearms. So we can see that change on the ground very early. It's still, early to say what exactly happened, the sequence of events, because we don't want to speculate. This is a very sensitive matter. We are hoping that the Indian Army or the government or the MEA will come out with an official statement, and once that happens, things will be clear. But I can tell you from sources that the situation remains extremely grim, tense and volatile at the line of actual control over the last few days.
Let me also bring in Gaurav Sawant on this broadcast. Gaurav, good morning. Last few weeks, you've been telling us about the situation at Pangong So and how perhaps it was all building up to this very incident of firing that we're reporting now. Since 1975, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time that shots have been fired.
This is a very tricky situation at the line of actual control, Akshita, where what the Chinese are claiming is that the Indian Army opened fire. Our sources in the army are confirming, yes, warning shots were fired, and this is very rare, that the army fires in the air. But a very clear message was sent out to the Chinese as one of their patrols tried to come extremely close to a dominating height where the Indian Army has been deployed, post 29th of August. And that is where, was this an attempt to dislodge us? Was it an attempt to take over that peak? Was it just a probe patrol? Or were they trying to occupy that height? Now, the army did not want to take any chances, and that is why there was some firing in the air to send out a very clear message to the Chinese that they need to go back. The Chinese, we are told, also fired again in the air. But one thing was very clear, that another Galwan kind of an incident where there was, where soldiers would come too close to each other, jostle with each other, fight with medieval weapons, all of that situation was avoided and the Chinese went back. But this is extremely, extremely rare. Like you pointed out, there was firing in 1975. There are some reports that seem to indicate that a couple of days ago, again, a cautionary firing took place on the 31st to send out a message to the Chinese that they shouldn't try and come too close. And if talks are on, there should be no movement on ground. Also, Akshita, you'd recall that External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also made it very clear to the Chinese that for the relationship to move forward, there needs to be peace at the line of actual control. the Chinese clearly, there's a disconnect between what they say and what they do on ground.
We've been seeing that really in the last 2 months or so, that they say something and do something quite contrary to, what they've been speaking about in their detailed statements. Abhishek, I want to understand from you what the situation is currently on the ground. Going by what our sources have told us, and that is what India's version of events is, that these Chinese troops actually tried to enter into Indian positions, and that's why these warning shots were fired. Have they retreated now after these shots were fired?
That's right. What we've heard is that a retreat took place, but whatever little we have been able to gather is that, over the last few days, the Indian Army is occupying some very crucial heights, and that's something that has not gone well with the Chinese. They are feeling threatened that the Indian Army is at dominating positions overlooking some of their critical military installations, including the Moldo garrison and the Spangur Gap, which is very, very critical for Chinese military movements, Chinese mobilization. So with the Indian Army on these stops, there is a sense of panic, one can say. And over the last few days, there have been attempts by the Chinese to intrude once again into Indian territory. On the contrary, China has been accusing India of crossing the line of actual control. India has maintained that that has never happened. I can tell you one thing, that since August 29, things have completely changed on the ground. The situation is not what it was earlier. With this incident of firing being reported now, it's very clear that what happened in Galwan, the Indian Army is not going to allow that. The army is not going to wait for a situation where Chinese troops come armed with barbaric kind of weapons like iron-studded clubs, and things like that. And perhaps that's the reason why the Indian Army resorted to a warning fire to make sure that the troops from the Chinese forces do not come very close, and a Galwan-like incident does not take place again.
Abhishek, before I take this across to Gaurav, I just want you to again break down for our viewers the sequence of events. There's a bit of, conflicting reports on exactly what happened. We understand, and from what we know at this point, and this is the information that's still coming out, we're yet to get a formal confirmation on this. But Abhishek, is it that the Chinese troops tried to enter Indian territory, and we're also hearing that they fired first? So, were those warning shots? Were they offensive shots? What were they?
What we've gathered, Akshita, right now is that these were, in fact, warning shots, and it was to make sure that the proximity between the troops is not very close. And the reason why this incident has happened is because it appears till now that, this was once again a preemptive action by the Indian Army. The Chinese have been very quick this time to put out an official statement. So that's rather strange. The Chinese usually want to put these things under wraps. So that's something that we need to look at carefully. And that's why it's important that we wait for an official statement from the Indian side that puts out a clear sequence of events. As of now, things are not very clear, but what I can tell you is that these were warning shots to make sure the Chinese do not come anywhere close to the Indian positions.